All right, I'm excited. I am here today with the tax lead brand strategist, Hannah Keeling. Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So we're going to talk a little ABM today, account-based marketing, everyone's favorite term that nobody defines the exact same way. So let's start off. Hannah Keeling, how do you define account-based marketing?
Okay, I'm going to say ABM is a B2B marketing strategy that aligns sales and marketing towards targeted high value accounts with personalized outreach. I think that's pretty succinct.
I think that's broad. And I think where the disconnect comes is there's two ways of looking at ABM. There's like the, hey, these are our target accounts and we've prospected 2,000 of them. And then there's the, hey, these are the 5 organizations we want to meet the most at the trade show. So we're going to send them empty boxes, empty iPad boxes, and we're going to tell them if they want the iPad, swing by the booth and we'd love to give it to them. Okay. So those are two different strategies that people have considered ABM that are, are still narrow, but one's far more narrow than the other. So how do you determine how narrow you should be when building out an ABM campaign?
Okay, so I like to think of the more personalized, the better. When we're talking about ABM, our goal again is personalization. The more that you try to appeal to everybody, you start to appeal to far less of them impactfully. So when you can really hone in on, I won't say your top 5 accounts, but your top 50 accounts, and we can really individualize our messaging towards those accounts, make it feel really custom, tailored to them, that's when you'll find the best outreach. Although I do love the guerrilla approach you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. As of this recording, I'm a couple of weeks from coming back from inbound, and you see some companies do little tricks here and there, and no iPad. I didn't see any iPad giveaways, but a lot of like $25 Amazon giveaways. And it's really funny because some people eat that stuff up. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'll take a demo. That sounds great. $25 on Amazon." But I think to your point, like again, it always kind of goes back to the essence of B2B marketing, right? We want to get the right message to the right person at the right time. And this is a way to do it in a hyper personalized way. And I think a lot of times when companies are doing account-based marketing, they look at the account first, right? So if we're looking at, let's say like a company like ours, we're trying to get somebody onto HubSpot and we want to get a manufacturing company onto HubSpot because that's a very common ICP of ours. And we see that at this company, they've got a bunch of different stakeholders. They've got sales leaders, they've got marketing leaders, they've got operations people. And we want all of them to be interested in HubSpot, but we've got to get a different message to each person on the account that actually resonates with them. So how, when we're doing ABM, do you recommend delineating this? Because I don't know. I mean, like there's not like a magic number, but you do have to recognize that different people at different positions need a different message. So how do you kind of weigh all those variables to really figure out what campaign deliverables should exist?
So there's 3 methodologies for ABM, and it's going to depend on the size of the account, the activation for you to determine. But we talk about a one to few, a one to many, a one to one. A one-to-one outreach means every single thing that you're writing feels hyper personalized to that specific person. A one to few is going to mean that we're bucketing those people into very close classes together so that the messaging still feels hyper personalized and they can't tell it wasn't written specifically for them, but it's a little bit more scalable. And then we have that one to many, which in a lot of ways leverages like personalized fields and some automation to create the impression that it is personalized to you, but it's much more scalable in terms of outreach there. So I just wanted to start by saying that. Now, in terms of actually breaking out these contacts into those groups, you're really looking at what is the messaging that they need to hear? What are the pieces of your software that are going to move the needle for those people. And then you bucket them together based off of that type of messaging, again, to make sure that the messaging resonates as much as humanly possible. And how many buckets you're going to have, again, is going to depend on budget, your total audience list, your goals with the account. So there's a lot of things to put into play when coming up with a strategy, but those are kind of where I'd start.
Yeah, and there's so many different variables and outcomes that come from these different strategies, right? So like one-to-one definitely catches a person's attention the most. But if they're not, a key stakeholder, if they've got, 9 other people who have to make a decision, and they can't actually move any needles, great that you got them to open and engage and maybe even reply to what you were saying. But, it doesn't necessarily go anywhere. And then, one to many, that is, that's giving yourself more at bats, right? Like so many people that are like, oh, it's a numbers game, whatever. I don't know that I have too strong of thoughts on that. And then I think, one to few tries to blend both of those things. How do we personalize it a little bit, but also get the volume? How do we have our cake and eat it too? Yeah. So when a company's determining like, how do we go after? Is it similar to like different ad campaigns where you want like a top, middle, and bottom of the funnel campaign? Is it like, do you try all three? Do you help a company understand where they should start first, collect a little data, and then potentially pivot from there? What goes into that decision making?
So I typically like to think of an ABM approach kind of as a pilot program that scales. So typically I'm starting a little bit smaller, working out the kinks and what the messaging needs to be to convert people, how long that funnel process looks like, and then leveraging our found data to expand it to more accounts. But typically, at the heart of ABM is that most of these companies have multiple people involved in the decision-making process. So I'm typically trying to identify kind of those top 3 roles that impact the decision-making process and then ranking those in terms of priority. So the ultimate decision maker, of course, is going to get the most content driven towards them, the most personalization. But then we also want those advocates to be part of the education process so that they can help close the deal on the other side.
Okay. And as I joked at the beginning that everybody kind of has a different definition of ABM, what are some misconceptions about ABM or things about it that people get wrong?
So we actually have an entire blog article that dives into this. So not to tease everybody, but there will be a link in the description to that. But I'll give you a few as a quick rundown. I think sometimes people look at ABM as like the too expensive alternative to demand gen. ABM actually has a better ROI than demand gen because it's more specific. Of course, you are paying more per like click, but the thought is that the click is so much more valuable, so you should be willing to pay more for it. So whenever cost comes into a consideration with ABM, I'm like, this is tying directly to sales more so than a traditional demand gen potentially might. Another piece with ABM is I think some people think it's for everyone. And I hate to break it to you, but it requires certain things to fall into place for me to even recommend ABM to begin with. As an example, if we don't have sales buy-in, I'm never recommending ABM. The reason is, at its core, ABM is the alignment of sales and marketing. If you only have one side come to the table, all of the progress that you make on that one side is going to die when the handover happens. So you have to have like clear alignment between both sides of the business to feed back data to improve the platform. So off the top of my head, those are 2. Like I said, we dive a little bit deeper and you can learn more there.
Okay. And last question, because I think obviously anybody in sales and marketing leadership is always wanting to understand ROI as well as timeline. And we've all heard a million different stats about how many times somebody needs to be contacted before they'll take an action. So when starting a campaign, regardless if you're doing one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, how long, what's the expectation that customers should have for their ABM campaigns to start getting the meetings booked that they're looking for, and ultimately getting the traction and ROI that they're looking to achieve?
I feel like this is kind of a setup question. Every time we try every time we try to turn strategy into a one size fits all, I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot in the first instance we talk about. I will say, as far as expectation setting, what is the timeline from start to finish to nurture somebody into signing your product? That's not going to change with ABM. I mean, maybe we can narrow it down a little bit, but we still have to go through all the same steps to educate, to entice, to engage, to close. So I don't want to say that those pieces get eliminated. We just hyper focus our messaging there to have better response doing those same outreach methods.
I love, after a lifetime in this business of, prospects asking for, broad price range without information, without me understanding everything, and me having to say, oh, it's very circumstantial. We got to figure out X, Y, Z. That I tried to do the same thing to you, and you threw it back in my face. So lovely. I loved it. Well, thanks so much. I think this is a good overview of what ABM is, and more importantly, how Attack looks at ABM, because even if everybody else looks at it a little bit differently, we do have our own spin, and we do actually understand what moves the needle. And once we get a little bit more information with the company, we can tell them a little bit more about that timeline and ROI. But like you said, it's not one size fits all. Hannah, thanks so much. I think this is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for today. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, and make sure you hit subscribe so you can see our latest videos as soon as they drop. We really appreciate you watching. See you next time.